Hello, and welcome to the Makerspace's Cameo tutorial. This is the Cameo that we'll be using. To get started, we're going to run over some of the basics of what we can do with the Cameo. There's a lot that can be cut on the Cameo, but some of the most common uses are on sticker paper, vinyl, and paper. Cutting on the Cameo costs 25 cents a minute. You can bring in your own material to use, or you can buy some of our vinyl or sticker paper. Stickers are pretty representative of the workflow on the Cameo, so we're going to use that as an example of how to take the project from start to finish. To begin, you're going to need to import the image you want as a sticker into the software Silhouette Studio. Make sure that the file you're using is saved as one of the file types listed under Yes here. Then you're going to open up Silhouette Studio and go to File and click Open. I just searched up the file I'm using and opened it. You could also drag and drop it in from the File Explorer. Now that our image is in Silhouette Studio, we're going to format it in the way we want it. So obviously my image is way too large right now. The gray square that the crows are over top of is the size of the cutting mat that we're going to be using, so we have to make sure everything fits inside that. Beyond that, the size of the sticker paper is 11 by 8.5 inches, so the image has to fit within that as well. To start, I'm going to tell Silhouette what size our paper is by clicking on the little paper icon at the top of our icon bar over to the right. This will open a pop-up menu called Page Setup. Here it shows me the paper width and height. I'm going to change it to a width of 11 inches and a height of 8.5 inches. Now it wants to auto-orient it in portrait, but my image is in landscape, so just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to orient it landscape by clicking on the icon down here by orientation. Now I can see the red outlined rectangle, which represents the size of my paper. Now that I have that set up, I'm going to change the size of my image to fit in the paper. Up on the white bar at the top, there's a W and an H representing the image's width and height. I want my image a little bit smaller than the paper so that it'll fit better, so I'm going to make it 9 inches tall, which will then bring the width to just under 7 inches. There's a lock just to the right of the width and height that keeps the image proportional. If I were to click on that and unlock the proportions, I could squash and stretch my image. Now obviously when I shrink my image it isn't visible anymore. That's just because it's down on the bottom right side of the cutting mat. If I zoomed out, I could grab and drag it over to where my paper is, but with this tool up at the top, I can get it perfectly centered on my paper with just a couple clicks. First I center it horizontally and then vertically, and you can see it comes back to where we want it. Now we're going to come back to the page setup pop-up. At the very top of the pop-up there's these 3 icons. We were on the first one, which is a little sheet of paper, but now we're going to want to come to the third one, which is this square with little marks in the corner. This is the page for registration marks, which is how the Cameo makes sure that it's lined up with your image before it starts cutting. So here we click on to create the registration marks. This creates a red outline, which shows the boundaries within which our image needs to be. Then in the top left, bottom left, and top right corners, we have the black marks that are the actual registration marks that will print on the sticker paper along with our image. Those are the marks that the Cameo uses to get lined up. The hatching along the top and in the bottom left corner isn't super important, just make sure nothing is over the top of it. Now sometimes the registration marks will encroach on the space we want our image to fill. To fix this, you come to Inset and drag it all the way to the left. That's as small of a margin as we're going to get. Once our registration marks are set up, we'll come over to this butterfly icon on the right bar. This will open the Trace pop-up. We're going to click Select Trace Area and then drag and select our entire image. It automatically will show us a solid fill, but I prefer seeing the outline. Now we have 3 tracing options. We can click Trace, which will trace any path it can find. Trace Outer Edge will just trace the outside of our image, or Trace and Detach. Trace and Detach is usually the best option for making stickers. When I click it, I can then grab the white background and drag it away. You can see that it's taking away the yellow inside the headphones of the top right crow. This is because the threshold is too low. If I drop it down even lower, you can see it's going to cut away even more of the color. So I'm going to turn the threshold up a fair bit and then drag away the background. Now the crows are looking good, so I'm going to select the background and hit the backspace key to delete it. This leaves us with just our crows. Next we're going to come to the star icon on the right. This opens the offset pop-up. This is how we're going to get a white border around each sticker. To start, I'll select all of the crows. Then I'll click Offset. Internal offset can be used to hollow something out, but obviously that's not what I want. Now when I click Offset, it automatically gives everything a border of 0.085 inches. I can make this bigger or smaller by dragging the slider or by typing in the dimensions I want. The 0.05 inches actually works really well for me though, so I'll leave it at that. So now after I hit Apply, I can see this red outline around each crow which represents where the Cameo will cut. That looks good to me, so I'm going to move on. The next step in our sticker workflow is to prepare a printable and cuttable file. Now most of the work for this has already been done by our formatting work. Thus far, we've only been working on the Design tab up in the top right. Now we're going to come over to the Send tab. Now there's really only one change we have to make to prepare this file to be printed and cut. In the viewport, we can see that the crows have a red outline where we created the offset, but they also have a red line flush with the image. Those red lines tell us where the cameo will cut. To change the cut lines so that it won't cut flush with the crow, we'll select all the crows and then come to the top box over here on the right. Here we'll click Cut Edge. Now it's only going to cut the offset edge so our file is ready to print and cut. The next step is to print our image on sticker paper. For this video, I'm using matte white sticker paper. It's pretty standard, so the settings I'm using on it would work on most sticker papers. Before you load your sticker paper in the printer, you want to make sure you know which side is the sticker backing and which side is the actual sticker paper. Just peel up a corner to check and then load it in the printer, sticker paper side up. Now we're going to click on the printer icon in the top left. This will pull up the print preview, which all looks good. To get to the more specific settings, click Print. Make sure you have the right printer selected first and foremost. Then click on Preferences. Go to the Paper Source tab and make sure the drawer selected is the drawer you loaded your sticker paper into. Then you can go to the Quality tab. I found that if you set it to Graphics, you tend to get more vivid colors, but it's not a big deal if you forget to do this step. Once you're all set up, click OK, then Print, and then it'll send it off to the printer. Now the final step in the process is to cut the stickers out on the Cameo. First, we have to power the Cameo on. The power button is on the right side of the machine. Next, you'll open the Cameo cover by lifting it and then sliding it back. Make sure you close it when you're done because otherwise it gets dusty and gross. Now, we have to manually adjust the blade depth to what we want. To do so, you'll pull the white tab labeled 1 towards yourself and then lift the blade out. To adjust the blade depth, find the red mark and then turn the white base until the number you want lines up with the red line. For the matte white sticker paper, we'll be setting the blade depth to 6. To put the blade back in, make sure that the white tab is still pulled out so that the blade is released. Slide the blade back in the way you found it, and then once it's in place, push the white tab in to lock the blade in. This next step is optional, but it definitely has some benefits. I'm going to cover my sticker paper with a UV coated sheet. This will keep the colors brighter for longer and help protect the image. We have a roll of UV coating that you can cut your UV from, or often we have scrap UV that you can use as well. The UV doesn't have to cover the whole sheet, just anything that will be cut. To apply, peel off the backing of the UV coating. Then avoid creating bubbles under the UV. Set it down on one side, and then gently stick it down, moving in one direction. Once you've done that, to help remove any air pockets, take something with a flat edge, preferably the flat scraper in the Cameo tools, and push it from the center to the edge. Once the UV is properly adhered, you'll need to place the sticker sheet on the adhesive cutting mat. First, take off the dust coat from the cutting mat. Make sure that you remember to put it back on when you are finished with it. The less dust on the cutting mat, the better. Then take your sticker sheet and line the top corner up with the top corner of the grid on the cutting mat. While the cutting mat is meant to be adhesive, it loses its stickiness over time. So I would normally tape down the corners of the sticker paper, making sure not to cover any of the printed image. This will help you make sure that the page doesn't shift during cutting, which could cause skewed cut lines. Next, you will load the cutting mat into the Cameo. When doing this, it may take several tries to get it straight. Line the cutting mat up with the lines on either side of the loading area. Pushing from the back can help it go in more evenly. Then you will click the in arrow on the bottom left of the right panel of the Cameo. Once the cutting mat is loaded, you'll want to check the cut settings you have in Silhouette. First, you'll want to change the material to the most similar pre-programmed material you can find to whatever you're cutting. The Cameo has sticker paper, white settings that I will use. However, the default cut settings given are usually too low, so I'll go in and manually adjust them. I mentioned earlier that I would be using the blade at a depth of 6. If I've manually set the blade depth to 6 on the Cameo, I'll need to turn the blade depth up to 6 as well in Silhouette Studio. I'll turn the passes up to 2, which means that it will cut every path twice, force up to 16, and speed down to 7. Sometimes you're going to have to experiment with settings to find what works best on whatever material you're using, but these settings should work for most UV-coated sticker sheets. Now you're ready to cut, so just hit send and the Cameo will start registering and then cutting. Make sure to start a stopwatch when the Cameo begins cutting. You'll be charged based on the time spent cutting, so it's important that you have an accurate time. It's wise to check that the cut went all the way through before ejecting the cutting mat, because if it didn't, you can send it through again without ending up with skewed cut lines. If your stickers have cut all the way through and can be easily peeled away from the backing, then you are good to release the cutting mat from the Cameo by pressing the out arrow on the right panel. When you're finished cutting on the Cameo, make sure to close the cover again. Now you have stickers! Now we'll go over some other tools in Silhouette Studio and the basics of cutting vinyl. Just to start, I'm going to give us a larger working area. So I'm going to make the page width 24 inches and the page length 10 inches. Make sure registration marks are turned off because you won't need them for a vinyl cut. Now let's run through some of the drawing tools we have in Silhouette. These tools over on the left bar can be used to draw cutting lines. First, we have the straight line tool. It just makes individual straight lines. This next tool makes connected straight lines. This can be used to make a closed shape with straight lines. Then there's the curved line tool that works a lot like the pen tool in Photoshop. Each point you set down will be a point of curvature in the path. Then we have the circle tool. You start by selecting the center of your circle and then going out as far as you want the radius to be. From there you can drag around to either create a full circle or as much of a partial circle as you want. Then we have simple shape tools. First is the rectangle tool, which is pretty simple. Then we have the rectangle with beveled edges. You can adjust the points of curvature on the corners of the rectangle to create softer or harder corners. Then we have the oval tool. Next is the polygon tool. You can create polygons with this with as few as 3 sides and as many as 60, though at that point it really just looks like a circle. You can change the number of sides by using the gray slider in the middle and can rotate it using the red dots. Then we have the pencil tool. With this you can draw cutting lines freehand. You can leave the lines open, but if you get close to the starting point, the pencil will try to connect the line to close the loop. Similar to the pencil is the smoothing pencil. It operates as a sort of combination of the curved line tool and the pencil. It will create points of curvature as you draw to help smooth out your lines. Then we have the text tool. You can type whatever you want and experiment with fonts and size. You can do this by selecting your text and using the top bar or opening the text style pop-up from the right bar. Then we have the eraser tool. This can be used to erase our cut lines. It won't delete a whole path, it only erases what's within the blue circle. You can change the size of the eraser using the slider up top. Then there's the knife tool. When I cut lines across my existing cut lines, you can't see an immediate effect, but then if I pick up the lines and move them, you can see that it's cut my shape into a bunch of individual lines. Now there's more tools over here on the right that you can use to draw images and print them on something like sticker paper. However, you probably won't be using them that much, so you're welcome to experiment with them to figure them out if you want, but they should be pretty self-explanatory. We're going to take a quick look at the replicate tool. So suppose you're trying to make a whole sheet of the same shape. The replicate tool can help you format that. So I'll take my oval here and I can replicate it across the X or Y axis and create new rows or columns. I can rotate copies and create cool patterns, but the most useful feature in my mind is the fill page tool. So those are the tools that you're most likely to find yourself using. Now I'm going to bring in some image files that we will try and cut out in vinyl. We're going to be using these shapes because they have a lot of curved edges and sharp corners, so it'll be a good example of what the Cameo can do. So I'll just shrink it down so that it fits in our page, and then I'm going to select the trace area and trace the patterns. Once I have them traced, I can delete the image because all I need on vinyl is the cutting lines. Then I'm going to bring in this star image to trace as well. Now if I come to File and try to open it, it's going to open it in a different file. So instead, I'm going to drag and drop it in using the File Explorer. Now the first image was a JPEG, so it was just a big rectangle that we then used Silhouette to be able to trace the interior images. This one is a PNG, so you can see that we already have a red line around the star. Now that existing red line doesn't include the interior shapes, so we're going to select Trace Area just like before and trace the star. Now the cut lines will also cut the interior triangles, which is what we want. Now say I want 4 of the stars. That's when I'll come over to the Replicate tab to create copies. I initially had everything rather spaced out, but I went back in later and brought them closer together to decrease the amount of wasted vinyl. For the cutting of the gray vinyl, I set the settings to glossy vinyl, blade depth to 2, force to 10, passes to 2, and speed to 5. I cut the vinyl to the size I needed and put it on the cutting mat, then loaded it in the same way as the sticker paper. After it was finished cutting, I took some time to clean up the vinyl and peel away the leftovers. The blade didn't cut all the way through in a few spots, so in hindsight I might have done 3 passes, but a box cutter fixed it easily. And now we have our finished vinyl stickers. That covers the basics of the Cameo and working in Silhouette Studio. Good luck with your projects on the Cameo, and thanks for watching.